We're so happy that you're here to join us for the CASEL SEL Foundations session, and we want this to be interactive. You're going to hopefully learn from us this morning, but we're also hoping to learn from you and to hear about the social and emotional learning activities and approaches and programs that you might have going on in your school districts. I just want to get a feel for who's in the room. Do we have educators here? Raise your hand. Okay, do we have technology folks in the room as well? So a few of you. Okay, well, welcome. We're hoping this will be beneficial and informational and enlightening for you. We're happy to be here. I'm Pamela Randall-Garner. I work for CASEL. I am the senior staff advisor at CASEL, and I work specifically with my colleague Kyla Krengel from Metro Nashville Public Schools, but I also support Atlanta Public Schools and Tacoma and Denver Public Schools as they begin this SEL work. So yeah, I'm all over the place. So I'm gonna hand it over to Kyla so she can do a quick introduction and we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone. Like Pamela said, I'm Kyla Krengel. Forgot I'm not supposed to stand there. And I'm the Director of Social Emotional Learning for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Just to give you a little bit of background, I have been a classroom teacher. I chose to stay in middle schools. Not many people like middle school kids, and I love them. Oh, yes, thank you. So I taught 5th grade and 8th grade, and then I was an academic coach at an elementary school, and then became a classroom management specialist for the district. Then I was asked to go back in to a school, elementary school, and was an assistant principal. And then this position opened up, and it really fit perfectly with everything that I believe and have practiced throughout my journey in education, that everything just comes to relationships. It's all about relationships. So Pamela and I are excited to be here with you guys today, and like she mentioned, we are gonna be having you up, moving, talking, interacting, getting into some material. So if you're at a table without a red folder, if you could move up and make sure you're sitting at a table with somebody. So if you see somebody by themselves, please come up and join them, because we're gonna have you at your tables working together on some activities.
Okay, and just so you know, we don't want you to feel like you were shortchanged, but Kyla and I have a plane that we have to catch around 1 o'clock. So if it's okay with you, we're going to cut this at about 11:15 or 11:20. Is that okay? Do I have anyone that just feels like, no, you better stay there until 11:30 this morning? Raise your hand, because we will accommodate. Okay, thank you. I just didn't want you to think they didn't know what time their sessions ended. So, all right, so our learning objectives this morning is that hopefully by the end of this session, you will have a clear definition of what we mean. And when I say we, CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's a lot to say. But what our definition of SEL is. We're also going to talk a little bit about the research and the connections to positive student achievement. We have meta-analysis that show that when students are in high-quality SEL environments, they're not only going to do better in terms of their social and emotional skills, but they're also going to achieve academically and show those positive behaviors with each other and with their teachers and principals. And we're also going to learn some strategies. Hopefully you're going to learn some strategies that you can take right back to your district and your school and community tomorrow. And we're also going to talk a lot about adult SEL. We found that when we started something called the Collaborating Districts Initiative, the CDI is what we call it, that when we met with principals asking them about, well, why is SEL important to have in your school, and how do you think your teachers are going to be able to teach these competencies and these skills? The first thing out of 90% of the principals' mouths were, before we can start teaching the students, we've got to get a better handle of our adult SEL. We've got to make sure that our staff members are modeling these competencies before we even begin to think about teaching these skills to our students. And we're going to talk about how we integrate the SEL competencies into the district initiatives. We know that in every single school district, there are priorities, and that there are initiatives that you already have going on. We never want SEL to feel like one more thing on that teacher's plate or one more thing on that principal's plate. So it really is about, and you're going to hear Kyla talk a lot about this later, it really is about showing that SEL skills is just good pedagogy. It's good instructional practice that you can weave into, we hope that you will weave into the instructional program, weave into the curriculum and instruction. So we're going to talk about how you're going to weave these approaches, these skills into the district initiatives and priorities. And then we're going to explore how SEL, what the SEL has impact on school climate, culture, and relationships. And then, I'm thinking.
Not the right one.
No. So Kyla, I'm sorry.
This is not the right PowerPoint, but Pamela, do you have it? I have it on my laptop.
I have it too,
So,
because
but I know the next part.
Okay.
So let me, and I've got to pull it up really quick, because as we start to think about working together for almost an hour and a half today, anytime, one of the things that we find very important when working in groups, anytime we work with a group, we want to make sure that we have set some norms. So just some of the norms that we want to have you guys just think about agreeing to today is be present in the present, listen to understand, welcome and include everyone. Like I said, you guys are going to be talking to each other. You're going to be up. You're going to be moving. Hopefully, we'll take you a little bit out of your comfort zone. Every day, we ask students to step out of their comfort zone, but yet, too often, we stay safely in ours. And then we're also going to ask you to maintain a growth mindset. So thinking about those, be present in the present, listen to understand, welcome and include everyone, and maintain a growth mindset. Which one might be the most challenging for you to follow this morning? Be present in the present, listen to understand, welcome and include everyone, and maintain a growth mindset. Which one might be the most challenging for you? I want you all to actually shout it out in 3 seconds. Okay, just shout it out. 1, 2, 3.
Be present in the present.
So,
like be present in the present is.
Overwhelmingly, when we do this, it's be present in the present. We have so much going on. To actually sit and be present can be very challenging for us, especially at an amazing conference like this. So much going on. There's other sessions that you might be interested in. You might be planning what session you're going to next.
looks like
You
this.
might be like us, like, okay, I got to make sure I'm watching time. I got to make my flight. So our goal, while we're with you, is to make sure that we engage you. And while we might lose you for a second or a minute, our goal is to hopefully hook you back in and keep you engaged. And that's what we try to model anytime we are working with administrators. Oh, yeah, thank you so much.
DeAndre and team back
Yes,
there,
they're
Brad,
fabulous.
yes, they are. Thank
Okay, so the first thing we are going to do, can I take this?
Sure.
Thank you. The first thing we're going to do is have you guys up and moving. And I asked you all to sit at a table with a red folder. If you haven't, that's okay. You can move in a minute. But if you open up that folder on the left-hand side, there are some yellow cards. Go ahead, just kind of glance through them and pick one that might just really speak to you. So as you look through them, Pamela and I are gonna model what you're going to be doing. We're gonna be doing a quote exchange. We also call this activity quiz trade. This is a great way to have students talking, but getting up and moving, because let's be honest, right? Like, kids come to school to talk and socialize. And so we wanna give them something to talk about. So once you have your quote, once I ask you to, you'll stand up and find a partner. So to model, Pamela's gonna be my partner. We'll come together. Just to save time, we'll say the person with the shorter hair will go first, okay? So I will go first, we'll partner up. I know some of you all are like looking around at your table. I'll read my quote first, and then just share a connection or a thought I have about this quote. So mine is, if a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. And to me, I love this quote because I think that speaks to education today. And a lot of times, like I mentioned, too often we are in our comfort zone, and it's what's best for us instead of what's best for the kids.
My quote says, "Emotions matter, and they matter a great deal in school. A child who feels anxious, jealous, hopeless, or alienated will have difficulty learning, making sound decisions, and building relationships." And this is from Mark Brackett and Susan Rivers. I speak to this because I think this is also true for adults. I know that when I'm in a stressful situation, I can't focus on learning. And so I need to be more mindful and use those practices that we're teaching students to calm down so that I can be fully present and learning.
Excellent. So I read mine, commented. She read hers, commented. We trade cards. I walk away, I raise my hand, and I look for somebody new to partner up with. Shorter hair goes first, they read theirs, then the other person will read theirs. One other step though, because of a group this size, just so I don't have to shout and be like, "Oh guys, sit down." When you hear the chime, go ahead and wrap up your conversation. The second time you hear the chime, make sure that you're back in your seat. Okay, so you'll stand up, partner up, read your quote, hear the other person's quote. Make sure to trade cards. If you truly do not like the card you have, there are extras on every single table. Feel free to swap it out. That's okay. All right, you guys, go ahead and go. So I'm actually going to ask you just to pause where you are, because I'm going to continue having you stand. But that activity, quiz, trade, or a quote exchange, any thoughts about it as you were going around, hopefully meeting some new people, sharing some quotes? All quotes are SEL related. So any thoughts? Yes?
So, first of all, it makes the group smaller.
Oh, sorry.
DeAndre.
I'm putting Andre on the spot. DeAndre.
First of all, it makes the group smaller. So you have a large group. I only know one person. Now I'm starting to feel more comfortable. I'm starting to feel, hey, people are listening to me. They're accepting me because they didn't say, "Oh, I don't agree with that." Everyone was like, "Hey, that sounds awesome."
So you feel empowered, and you feel that you might belong to the group. Anyone? Any other thoughts? Oh, over here.
Can we get a copy of the cards?
Of course.
Because I would love to play this game
Yes.
with my pre-service teachers.
Yes, I will definitely send them to you. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I found myself moved the first time and the second time and the third time with 3 different partners and 3 different quotes.
Excellent. Excellent. And I've seen this activity, as he moves back there, done with pre-K all the way up through high school. And then I actually go in, and when I'm working with departments or faculties, entire faculties, a lot of times this is one that I can do. I've seen it done academically and socially. Yes.
Well, I ended up getting the same quote a few times. And so it was really interesting to see different reactions and different connections to the same quote, different people and the diversity of experiences.
And did you ever think, change your response to the quote?
No, but I think I delved a little bit deeper, the next time I had it.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to transition. Thank you all. You're staying where you are, and you can just kind of drop the quotes on a table near you. It's okay at this point. But I will give you guys copies of all the quotes if you would like. So that was kind of our greeting and our sharing. The next thing I want to do with you guys is more of an activity. And we're going to do we call a maitre d'. So it's another tool that you can use with faculties or with students to have people talking and to get you into the content a little bit more. So the first time, we call it a maitre d' because I'm going to act like, we're at a restaurant, not a fancy or an exclusive restaurant. So I'm going to ask that you guys find a table of 2. I don't actually want you to sit. I just want you to find a partner. So if I call for a table of 2, you find one other person to talk to. If I call for a table of 4, I want you to find 3 other people to talk to. Again, not sitting. And the reason I said we're not exclusive is because if I call for a table of 2 and you see somebody doesn't have a partner, please invite them into your table. It's okay. So the first question I'm going to ask you guys is, I'm pressing the wrong button. I'm going to call for a table of 2, and I want you and your partner to share about a teacher or a coach who had a positive impact on your life. A positive impact on your life, a teacher or a coach. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead, find a partner. This time, when you hear the chime, stay where you are and just wrap up your conversation, and I'll give you the next step, okay? So go ahead and go.
Okay.
Table of
Hi,
two.
I'm Pamela.
In my education career that made a huge impact.
So I heard some great things. I'm not going to have you guys share out, but I just heard some things about teaching humility, teaching confidence, perseverance, that idea of self-awareness. So the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is, in a minute, you will say goodbye to your partner, and I would like you to find 2 new people to talk to. Hopefully 2 people you have not talked to yet this morning. And when you get with them, you will share about a time when you felt a high level of engagement and excitement with learning. A time when you felt a high level of engagement and or excitement with learning. So say goodbye, say thank you to your partner, and find 2 new people. So our last one, I'm going to ask you guys to, again, say goodbye to your group and find a group of 4. So hopefully you're finding 3 new people. Oh, hold on. And I want you guys to talk about, how were your social and emotional needs met when you were in school? So how were your social and emotional needs met when you were in school? So again, find a group of 4, 3 others to join you. And if you notice somebody needs a group, just invite them in. Go ahead and go. Last one. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys to just pause where you are. And before I have you transition back to your seat, something I want to share with you is that what we've done this morning is how we are attempting to work with our teachers in Nashville and start every morning. And that's for elementary, middle, and high school. Obviously, it would vary different levels. But some of you already mentioned, like, you felt that the room got smaller, that you actually got to know more people. Hopefully, you got to talk to a bunch of different people. It was on content. This, even though it was social emotional learning, this was our focus. This was our content level. So I don't feel like we wasted any time by having you guys up, moving, and talking. But hopefully it met your social needs as well as your academic needs. The other thing is, it's a much more pleasant way if you are late. Hopefully you guys felt welcomed in, instead of like everybody stops and looks at you as you enter the quiet room, and the door opens. But hopefully you felt welcomed and greeted, and we pulled you right in. And I saw some groups like, oh, come join us. So it was very inclusive. So as you transition back to your seat, we want you to think about this, thinking about the end in mind. So what knowledge, skills, and attitudes do we want students to possess by the time they graduate from high school in order to thrive in the 21st century? So think about that as you find your way back to the seat. Hold on just a second. For those of you who have come in late, you are welcome to join a table. Hopefully find one that has a red folder on it. So we have plenty of room up front. So go ahead and think about that as you transition.
All right. Hopefully this was fun, and as Kyla said, an engaging way to start your day. And I also just want to remind you that this is really cheap to do. We did not spend a lot of money on cutting out cards, and there was no special program that you had to buy. This is something that you can start doing tomorrow, and it's basically free. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the history and how CASEL got started. We started back in 1994. And the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning is all about advancing the science of SEL. A lot of times people think that SEL is just a lot of touchy-feely, good feeling stuff, but it really is a science, and you'll learn a little bit more about the research behind SEL and the science behind it as we go more into this presentation. We also want to pay attention to the practice. And part of the main reason, or the most pressing reason for us to start the Collaborating Districts Initiative, which Kyla's district is a part of, was to really get into the classrooms and start working with teachers and principals around the instructional practices that need to happen in the classroom for you to have a high-quality SEL environment. We're also very involved with legislators and policymakers and lawmakers around federal and state and local policy making, so that we get the support for the teachers, for the principals, for the school communities to have the professional development that's needed, to go to the sessions, the conferences, and to meet with folks that are experts in the field. So we're really working with those policymakers to hopefully provide us more support. And our mission is to make sure that every single child gets an evidence-based, high-quality social and emotional environment. And this should happen from preschool through high school. That's our mission. So you've heard me talk a lot about the CDI districts. Here's where we are. We started Anchorage, Alaska. That was one of our first districts. Our most recent district was Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if you had a chance to see Dr. Karstafen yesterday. She was on a panel a couple of doors down. She is on fire about this work, and it's a top district priority in Atlanta, Georgia right now. Our second, another one of the first districts rather is Austin, Texas, along with Anchorage. That was one of our first districts. We started in Chicago, Illinois, which is where CASEL is headquartered. I used to work with Chicago with CPS for many years, and so they were right in our backyard, and we're well involved with the 600 plus schools in Chicago, public schools. And the third first districts that we started with was Cleveland, Ohio. So our first three districts were Anchorage, Austin, and Cleveland. And again, our most recent district was El Paso, Texas. Juan Cabrera, the superintendent, was also on that panel yesterday. And again, just starting this work, but so appreciative of the knowledge that we've established in the CDI as he's beginning this work in his district. And of course, we're in Nashville, and we're in Oakland, California, and Sacramento, and Washoe County, which is right outside of Reno. So those are our 10 CDI districts. Now, our definition, and this is CASEL's definition, SEL involves the processes through which children and adults develop these fundamental skills to understand and manage your emotions, to set and achieve positive goals, to be able to show empathy for others, to establish positive relationships, and to make responsible decisions. Those 5 competencies, or those 5 areas, those 5 skill sets, we all need as children and adults. And so we stress that these are important skills or competencies for all of us to be successful in school, work, and life. And I love those kids, aren't they cute? And so where does this happen? It happens in a safe, participatory school environment where there are high expectations, where there's a community involvement, where students get a chance to learn these skills, but also apply these skills, and adults, mind you. So that's where we're saying, where does it happen? It happens in the classroom, it happens in the hallways, on the bus, on the playground, on the way to school. It happens everywhere. And hopefully you're setting up this kind of mindset that students know that, you know what, I learned about self-management yesterday in class. I need to use those same skills when someone is hurting my feelings and I want to lash out on the way home from school. So it really should be happening everywhere. And now we're going to watch a video, but I want you, as you're watching this video, I want you to think about these 3 questions. Pay attention to what the students are doing. Think about and hear what the adults are saying about this, how it's impacting their learning and work environment. And then think about, most importantly, how does this look in your school? Maybe you've already gone down this road and you have a thriving SEL environment, or maybe you're just starting. So think about, as you're seeing this video, how can you start applying some of what you're learning into your homes, your own school environment? And Brian? Thank you. Thank you.
Social and emotional skills are the essential skills for success in school, work, and life.
Social emotional learning centers their mind and body. It reduces their emotional tension so they can be open to new content and material. We find that academic outcomes increase exponentially when students are nurtured, loved, and cared for, that we get much more out of them when we first address social emotional needs. So for us, it's actually an academic intervention and not just an emotional one.
If we expect students to be college and career ready, it's important for us to focus on these skills and competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. Self-awareness is the ability to identify your emotions, to be able to tie thoughts and feelings to behaviors.
We find that self-awareness is one of the hardest things for young people, being aware of their own body space and the impact of their words and emotions on other people. So a lot of the work we do is reflective, through conflict mediation, through circles, through journaling, having them see their own impact on the world and then how to shift that or make a different choice next time.
Self-management is the ability to self-motivate, to have self-control, to regulate one's emotions.
In the classroom, that may be a breathing exercise, or that might be counting to 5 or taking a break.
So with students who don't really know how to deal with their anger or don't really know how to resolve conflict, we're giving them a tool that helps them deal with it in a less stressful way.
Social awareness is about embracing diversity, showing empathy for others. Activities might include service learning projects, addressing social justice issues. Role-playing is a great opportunity for students to address how a person might have felt in a conflict on the playground.
We're going to see if other people have had some of the very same experiences around bullying that we've had.
You're in my boat if you have a bully now.
Wow, I see a lot of people.
Relationship skills are important in project-based learning. It's the ability to work cooperatively with someone, to resolve conflict.
It's the one skill you need your whole life. You may not need calculus tomorrow, but you have to know how to work in relationship, whether it's for a coworker or a life partner. You have to know how to handle conflict and how to handle challenges.
Sometimes at recess, Miney would come over and just start talking about us and saying mean things.
Is it your job to make Danae's job at school hard?
No, I know it's a form of bullying, and sometimes I'll say sorry to her.
So you choose to be someone's ally and make a better choice.
Responsible decision-making is considering the well-being for self and others. It's evaluating the consequences for various behaviors or actions. We do this through shared agreements, one-to-one problem solving, or having students debate an issue.
If you were like, hey, Kashida, how much does an A cost in this class? And you took out your wallet and I was like, I think $50 would work. Which one of us would be corrupt in that case?
You're the one that's asking for the money?
We're truly teaching these students to be productive citizens. We're teaching them life skills. We're teaching them how to problem solve effectively. We're teaching them how to be resilient.
I think of all the billions of dollars we've spent on Title I and all these intervention programs, and when all is said and done, what do we have to show for it? I think we're trying to teach technical things instead of devoting some of the resources to teach who you are as a person. Once you know who you are, then learning becomes exciting because you've already established a discipline.
It's important for teachers and principals to understand that it can't be a binder off the shelf. It can't be something that happens from 2:15 to 4:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It has to be part of the school culture.
Giving teachers flexibility, giving them a range of skills, giving them different ways that it can look, and allowing them to take their own personality and match that to what they want in their classroom has been the best way to get authentic, true practice.
If we continue to do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we always got. Is that good enough? I don't think it's good enough for the 21st century. We need to be the outliers to try things that have never been tried and see if they work. What are we waiting for?
Okay, So, what did you see from the students' perspective? What things did you see students talking about or doing? And we'll just popcorn this out. Yes, sir.
Well, I'll say that I'm reading into it, not that, because I was thinking don't whistle. What they are doing is freeing up attention to be able to focus, because they're bringing in stuff and they're being able to process these things in school.
Right on the spot. Like whatever happens, using the teachable moments for those students to think about, be reflective, and apply the skills that they've hopefully been learning. And we have one here and there. Okay. Yes, sir.
So I saw students sharing with each other where a lot of times, kids will internalize what's going on and their problems and they don't know how to deal with them. They're coming together with other students, they're coming together with adults in the building, and they're, like the previous gentleman said, they're processing, what's going on and able to let that off their shoulders then.
Mm-hmm. And you'll see that happening from little ones all the way up to high school. I mean, we talk a lot about restorative practices, and a lot of the restorative practices is about reflection and thinking about what you did and its impact on others, and then how do we make it right? So, yeah, we saw that. Yes, sir, we'll go here, and then there was a young lady here.
Okay, for me, it's the removal of fear.
Yeah.
It's so, the biggest obstacle for learning.
Right. We know a lot about brain research that when you're fearful or anxious, you're not going to be receptive. You're not going to be able to learn. And I don't want to go into all the brain research around it, but the lizard kind of brain takes over. And so reducing those fears and anxiety in school and making sure it's a safe space. And thank you.
I'd say too, long term, it's an incredibly practical, proactive approach, because we've seen so much violence and bullying and the direct results of that, more violence, that this empathy that they're learning here is a life-term goal of just changing the world. They're learning right now in class because they can think and their adrenaline is reduced and all of those different things that we know. But long term, I think it's going to have a really significant effect, and I hope you're keep gathering the data to see what the long-term effect is.
We definitely are. We've got a lot of interest through our work over 20 plus years, and it's just getting more rich and richer and richer and more robust. So we are. What about the adults? What did you see or hear from the adults, both the teachers as well as the superintendent? Yes, ma'am.
One big thing I noticed is that the teacher is a facilitator. So they're not telling you, okay, you need to apologize, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do that. The students are having the discussion, and the teacher's kind of in the background just helping move it along. So it's very student-driven. Mm-hmm.
There's a talk about this school in Chicago, and it's in the south side of Chicago, worst part of town, high gang activity. But this little school, Marcus Garvey Elementary School, you will actually see second graders and third graders and kindergartners saying, you know what, you said something, we need to go back to the peace corner and work this out. And they have the independence without having to get permission from the teacher to go back on their own. And they have a set peace corner in every single classroom where students are encouraged, go work out your differences on your own. And then when you're ready, come back into to the group activities. So we know that this works as little as pre-K students all the way up to high school. And giving those students that kind of autonomy is really important. We'll take one more. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm just sharing one experience from Finland, where I'm coming. So
we should be sitting and listening to you.
No, but just one thing that I own a startup focused on SEL, and so I meet a lot of teachers and talk with them about SEL. And what they pointed out is that their own work well-being gets better when they focus on these sort of programs in their class. And I think that is something we didn't anticipate it at all, but it has now popped up from a lot of places.
Well, again, kudos to you. If you don't know, there's so much great research that's going on in Finland and the great things that you all are doing. So that's encouraging to hear that from you. But what about what's going on in your communities? We know about Finland, but what are some of the SEL things that you're doing in your school communities or in your classroom or or at church, wherever? What are some of the approaches that you're taking that's working? Or that's not working, that you might want to kind of put out as a problem of practice? Yes, sir.
I know, I got you. So Lee Vandenecker here right next to me. She is a teacher in my building. We're at East High School, just up the road a few miles. She teaches a class that's pretty unique. It's certainly unique to our state. It's Techniques for Tough Times.
Wow,
And
like that.
the focus of this, she actually has written the curriculum and spent a lot of her life's work devoted to social emotional learning for students in our state and in our district. And anyway, so we have a class dedicated to teaching social emotional learning to students that are mixed grade. We've got our school, we're the second most diverse school in the state as far as high schools go, and we have the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor. And so her classes are very reflective of our demographics. And then we are right now trying to, the last few years we've been integrating this class into our middle schools that are in our district. And we are focusing on professional development for our staff on how to integrate social emotional learning into their content areas. Because kids will learn more for you than they will from you. So
That's perfect. And the key word there, well, kudos to you, young lady. So thank you for that. And to have the forethought, the foresight all those years ago to do this is excellent. But that's what we're hoping will happen, is that these practices will be integrated into every single content. You heard me say on the video that it can't be that we're doing this on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and now you're going to learn your SEL skills, and then we're going to stop it there. We really encourage teachers and principals to model these behaviors in every single instructional practice, in the chemistry class, in the art class. The bus drivers in Atlanta, they just got through teaching, training their SROs, their safety resource officers. The bus drivers have gone through similar training, and the cafeteria workers. So really making this embedded throughout the entire school community is really the only way you're going to do this and have it be sustainable over time. Thank you all for that, for your insight. So this is the CASEL wheel. How many of you have seen the CASEL wheel? This is probably a few of you. Okay, well, for those of us in the SEL world, this is like the Bible. So I'm going to just quickly go through this because it's comprehensive. But when we're talking about self-management, I'm not going to go through every bullet, but those are some of the things we're talking about. Impulse control, goal setting, organizational skills, self-awareness, being able to know that I'm really happy today, or I'm really sad, and here are the reasons why, or I'm really angry when you said that to me. And also having a sense of self-efficacy, like, you know what, this algebra problem is really hard, but I know I can do it because I have the support from my teachers, I have the support from my classmates. I feel self-sufficient in getting through this challenging problem. Responsible decision-making. Being able to evaluate a choice, problem solving, doing things that are ethically correct, having time to reflect on, well, why won't I do that same decision, make that same decision in the future? Being able to evaluate what's a good decision, what's a bad decision, analyzing the situation to hopefully make the best choice. And communication, we know that communication is key, and no matter what age. So being able to be socially engaging and to be a good friend and to communicate, to work cooperatively, to be a good teammate. And also helping and seeking help, being able to determine, this is a little bit more difficult and I need some support. So being able to make that decision around, I need to reach out and get support on this particular problem. And showing empathy, being able to put yourself in the shoes of another person. Having respect for others, regardless of if they're like you or not. And I think, these are lessons that, especially in this day and time, in this age, these skills are critical to our existence and to our society. Our original CASEL wheel was just those 5 competencies, but as we started doing more and more of the research and realizing that, you know what, we need to be a little more explicit about where this happens, we know that we have to explicitly teach these 5 competencies, but we have to make sure that it is integrated into the curriculum and into the instructional process. So we added that additional ring. We also need to pay attention to school policies. We have several of our CDI districts that they decided, you know what, we're pushing too many kids out. We've got out-of-school suspensions that are out the roof. We're expelling students. I'm talking about expulsion. Don't come back here. Out the roof. So we know that we need to start paying attention to policies, school policies and district policies. I would say 3 or 4 of our CDI districts, they've now created a policy that we are not going to suspend any child from kindergarten to 2nd grade. There's no reason to push a 2nd grader out or a kindergartner out. Whatever that child is going through that's causing havoc in the classroom, we need to be supportive and surround that student with the supports that's going to keep that child in the classroom. And being mindful, even for the older students, of do we really need to push this child out now, or can we provide the supports, the wraparound supports that's going to keep that child learning in the classroom? And also engaging the full community. These are practices that we're hoping to see in all kinds of settings, community centers, in your faith-based organizations, bringing the parents in to say, this is important, I'm going to support and reinforce what the children are learning in school in our home at night. And so what does the research say? Hopefully it's not this complex. But we know one of the founders, one of the 3 founders of CASEL back in 1994 and 95, Daniel Goldman gave us the permission to talk about emotions and showed us first, for really the first time, that emotions are really important, not only in school, but in your work life, in your personal life. So he was the first one to start talking about the emotions and how it really is, in some cases, in most cases, more important than what your IQ is or how smart you are. So we're thankful for Daniel Goldman and all of the books now since then that he has given us to back up the science behind SEL. So you heard me talk earlier about a meta-analysis. This was a study that was done with over 213 research studies. By Weisberg, Durlock, and others, Dimnicki. But they show that after studying students in high-quality SEL environments, that there was not only an improvement in social emotional skills, which we would expect, but there was also improved self-esteem, improved reactions to each other, so improved attitudes about self and others, less disruption in the classroom, less students being pushed out for inappropriate behavior. And this last bullet really gets the attention a lot of times of principals in the room and teachers. But on average, there was an 11 percentile gain on the academic assessments, the state assessments, for those students that participated in this high quality environment, SEL environment. And conversely, there was a reduction in conduct problems, less referrals to the principal's office, and less emotional distress, at-risk behavior, depression. We know through the SCAN study that of the 16 21st century skills that employers are looking for, half of those are directly tied to SEL. Self-esteem, being able to get along with others, taking responsibility, making good decisions, being good problem solvers. So these are the skills that, across all sectors, employers want these skills, their new employees, to come well prepared to demonstrate these skills on a regular basis to make the work environment more productive. We've also done some cost analysis of SEL, and there was a longitudinal study that was done in Seattle. It was the Seattle Social Development Project. They followed these students for 15 years, and what they found is after those 15 years, when the students got to 21, they found that these students that came from a high-quality SEL environment outpaced their peers. Higher graduation rates, greater college attendance, more economic employment, less mental health issues, less demonstration in the juvenile or the justice system, and also less substance abuse problems. And the cost benefit, the average cost benefit analysis for this particular study was for every dollar invested, there was a $2.11 return. But it gets better. There was another study done by the Columbia's Teachers College, and they found that when, again, students were in high quality SEL environments, for every dollar invested, there was an $11 return. And so that was a more recent study, 2015, this just came out. And this was through the Columbia Teachers College. So this is our theory of action. We know that when we use an evidence-based SEL program, and CASEL has something called the CASEL program guide, where it's kind of like a consumer report of sorts of about 26, 28 evidence-based programs that we've vetted and that we can say there's research to show that these programs work in many demographics, that when we do an evidence-based program, we explicitly teach these 5 competencies that you just learned about. And we do this in a safe, caring, high expectation, engaging, supportive, cooperative environment. This is what happens. Students are going to have a greater attachment to school. They're going to be more connected to their peers. They're going to be committed to the instructional and learning process. There's going to be less risky behavior. There's going to be less acting out and less depression, less at-risk behavior. And ultimately, that's going to lead to greater success in school, work, and life. So that basically is why we're doing this, and this is how we approach this every time we go into a school district. So again, talking about the adults, and I'll just give you a moment to reflect on that quote or question. And I want to take that little girl home. Oh, she's just so cute. So the adult research shows that when adults model these behaviors, students are paying attention, first of all. It's not just talk the talk, but you have to walk the talk. And so we know that not only are they going to get along better with their peers, but students are really paying attention, and they're going to want to learn for you. Someone in one of my groups said, my students, it's different, weren't learning from me, they want to learn for me. And so that's what happens when the adults are actually demonstrating these behaviors. We know, again, through several studies, that when teachers show patience and empathy, obviously there's going to be greater communication. Students are going to feel safer in the classroom. They're going to be more engaged. Student conduct is going to improve, and academic performance is also going to improve. Those are 2 separate studies showing the importance of adult SEL. We see that teachers burn out less when they have strong social and emotional learning skills. And we see that when school leaders demonstrate these behaviors, these skills, there's a greater relationship on that staff. I'm a former high school principal, and I was a principal for 6 years, and I can attest to that when I treated my faculty as, combined, we're a team, we're making decisions together as opposed to do it my way, there was greater rapport. My school was #1 in the state. Now, I acquired that school. I can't take credit for that. But I was able to maintain that #1 status for 6 years. And we became an international baccalaureate school, and we had high expectations for those students, and they got the IB diplomas. It was all based on those trusting relationships. And so we were doing these SEL skills. We were doing these SEL skills back in the late 90s. I'm going to zoom through, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague. There was just one more. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, so in Nashville, just to give you a little bit of background, and we actually have 88,000 students in Nashville, over 159 schools. That does include charter schools. We do have a high EL population, and about 73% of our students are economically disadvantaged. We have about 100 people moving to Nashville every single day right now. For some reason, we are the it city, and it has been very interesting to see how that affects our schools. And you can see our mission from the SEL department. For a while, I will be honest with you, we did everything wrong. I was the only person for 159 schools to work on social emotional learning for about 2 years, and that's not the way to do it. But this year, we changed departments, and so I have the SEL team, I also have the restorative practice team, but I also have the behavior analysts. So more people to help out with the work. So big picture, what is SEL and MNPS? Some of the things that we really focus on. We don't have SEL standards, but we do have SEL I can statements. So we've talked a lot about really integrating the SEL into the academics. Some of our schools have only been able to commit like 10 minutes at the beginning of the day to that idea of a morning meeting or a circle, what we had you guys do at the beginning of our session. So the way to make sure that we're teaching these skills is to integrate this into academic content. So we're working with our curriculum and instruction department to make sure that these 5 core competencies and the SEL I can statements are integrated into math, science, social studies, music, art, computers, everything. We do a lot of professional development with the adults. First thing we learned was that we were called out to schools for the adults, not for the kids. So really focusing on those adult skills like Pamela talked about. We do have, like I mentioned, the I can statements, and they are on our Blackboard page. We keep all of our resources there. But just to kind of give you a quick view of what they are, we took the 5 core competencies and broke those down. So every grade level, pre-K through 12th grade, it looks like this, these I can statements. So out of the 5 core competencies, you have 2 to 5 I can statements per competency. This can be really overwhelming when we show teachers. And so we connected it to scope and sequence and broke it down throughout the year that these skills should be taught through every subject. And we showed them how that can happen. However, we also have some schools that we've worked with who have said, you know what, first 9 weeks, as a school, we are only focusing on self-awareness. So every single teacher is focusing on these self-awareness skills. Second 9 weeks, we'll focus on self-management. And then they actually took the responsible decision-making and broke that up into all 4 9 weeks so that all 5 competencies are being taught. And we have connected all of our work to the team evaluation, making sure that's the teacher rubric and how they're evaluated, but also making sure that we have this alignment. So one activity that we're gonna have you do, just to kind of get an idea of how we're doing this. In our district, we have a new superintendent this year, and we have 2 areas of focus. That's literacy and culture. So everything we're doing, we have to connect back to literacy and culture. Fortunately, we are culture, right? So we have to make sure that we're connecting it to literacy. So we've been working with our literacy coaches and teachers with strategies on how they can integrate SEL into literacy. So there is in that red folder on the left-hand side, there's an article there. And due to time, I'm only gonna have you just kind of skim that first page, and then I'll go over the activity. So skim that first page, knowing that you have it there and can refer back to it. And as you skim through it, just think, is there a question that you might have that you can bring back to your group? So just take a minute and skim that first page. Okay, I know some of you are finishing up that first page or have moved on. So you can feel free to use this article. When I presented this to our literacy coaches, I had them read this article. And then the strategy that we use, it's called a question quad. And so I modeled it with the adults, and I'm gonna have you go through this, kind of a modified version, but you do have on the right-hand side of the red folder, each one of you do have the example of what the question quad is with all of the resources that we use. So for a question quad, we just really we'll have you read the article, and then you would create a question. And that's what I just briefly asked you to do as you went through. When we're working with students, sometimes we find they need a question stem to help them get started. So we've provided some for them. So, what words or phrases help you understand social emotional learning? What do you think the author meant by this quote? And then the next part is the activity, and I'm going to have you do it just briefly, is that you would get into groups of 4. And reader A, you would letter off, so you have A, B, C, and D, and person A would ask their question. Just the one question that they came up with. Reader B would then rephrase the question to ensure that they understand it, and then to answer the question using a piece of textual evidence. Reader C would then either agree or disagree and add to the conversation using a different piece of textual evidence. And then at this point becomes a conversation within the group where reader D would ask a probing question to the entire group that propels the question forward. When we worked with schools, we noticed that we had to put a timeline on how long the section D conversations went on. So I'm going to have you guys do this, and if you have 5 at your table, that's okay. If you have 4, or maybe one of you can join a group, just to kind of get an idea for how this would go through. So just letter off, and reader A would read their question, B would rephrase it, find a piece of evidence to add to answer the question. Reader C would find a different piece of evidence to add to it, and then reader D would ask a probing question. So I'm going to give you guys just a few minutes to go ahead and try to work this out and see how you think it goes. I just used it nice and soft this time. So one of the things that we're seeing in classrooms when we use this process, we actually have them go on. So then if they're in groups of 4, once they finish, reader D asks their question and they have a little dialogue, then reader B becomes reader A and they ask their question. So actually when we give students a piece of text and I have them read it, we ask them to write down 2 questions, just in case somebody asks theirs already. So it's working on those SEL skills as well as the academics. Any thoughts or questions as you were going through this activity? Very quickly. Oh.
Brilliant protocol.
Thank you.
My handler handed me the microphone. Brilliant protocol, and in the fact they brought the affective filter down, and I really like the overlay of contextual evidence, because going back to what you said, your 2 main focuses were in your district, right? Culture and contextual evidence, and this could be done with any article that you have out there. So yes. Brilliant protocol.
Thank you. And I forget what I was going to say now. I don't know. Any other thoughts? Maybe I'll get back to it. Hold on. I know.
I wonder how, in this wonderful protocol, an English language learner who wouldn't necessarily be able to do the ABCD, they wouldn't be the first to jump in, or your introvert who's not going to be the immediate jump in and is going to be thinking a lot, how those types of students or those types of, let's say, the introvert teachers would participate, how the SEL, how this would work with them.
Right, and so some of them, we've seen it in some ways, they've partnered up with somebody to have a dialogue before they come back to the group. And another thing, in a small group, students feel a little bit safer. So I may not offer to be A, I may offer to be D, so that I'm still participating, but I don't have to ask my question right up front. Another thing that we've seen is that knowing that we might be doing this activity the next day, I've seen some teachers give the article to students the night before and say, go ahead, read this. This is what we're doing. Come up with 2 questions. So when the student comes in the morning, the teacher checks in with the student on their 2 questions to make sure that the student feels comfortable. And then they're actually the ones who go first so that they're able to participate and share what they have. And then we had sorry. Just go right there. Right there, and we'll get back to you.
I've also had success with complex text, and you just have strips or little chunks, and everyone gets the same chunk, And then there's a question from that, and then they would put that in this protocol, they'd put that back, and each of them would grab the next one. And so somebody else would, therefore it's not like overwhelming for a second language learner per se.
Right. And so for an article this size, you might want to chunk it up. And you can do, okay, now A, you're asking your question for this part. B, you're going to ask your question for the next part.
Is that on? I really like how this provides a structure and an expectation to give an opinion, right? Even if it's different than someone else's, but also the textual evidence piece. And I think that's a really nice modeling that you do that here in the structure, but then you carry it on into social interactions. Like, I feel like this is what happened, and here's evidence of this.
Well, and I remember what I was going to say. Yay, it came back while y'all were here. One of the things that we actually, when we're working with kids, when we start off, and you can see it in the reflection page on the back, one of the questions we ask is your SEL intention. So before we even start this process, we ask students to think, what is your SEL intention for today's activity? So thinking about those 5 core competencies, students might say, you know what, today I'm really working on self-management. I had a hard time blurting out last time. Or today I'm really working on relationship skills and actually listening to what my group members are saying. And then at the end, we have them come back to it. How did you do on your SEL intention? Then how did you do with the content and the information? And so they can keep these forms and just see the growth and maybe look back and say, oh, okay, I'm still struggling with self-management 5 weeks in, you know, and I can continue to work on that, or maybe I need to focus on something different. So there's the reflection piece as well. One of the things that we have been doing in Nashville is, you know, we go out and we work with schools and we train them, but how do we know that anything is happening in schools? And how do we know that the climate is changing and that what we're sharing is actually getting into the classroom? So we've been working with our CASEL consultants and our own research and assessment department, and we've created a walkthrough tool. So I can go into a school, my team, we go into a school and we look at 3 main areas: the overall school-wide environment, and then we get into the classroom and we look at how is SEL being integrated into academics. We also look at classroom management. By doing that, some of the things that we've learned through our own district is we have limited student voice. Student voice is not happening in the classroom. There's limited student collaboration, limited student reflection, and limited interactive pedagogies. So think about what we've done today. We did kind of a morning meeting, a community gathering where you guys were up talking, content-based. And then just this one activity. So if we really got into, if I'm a language arts teacher, we really got into a lesson and we did a question quad, we would have hit all of those areas: student voice, student collaboration, explicit SEL, interactive pedagogies, student reflection, so that is true SEL integrated into the academic classroom. Any thoughts or questions? How do we get the slide deck? You just feel free to email me. And did we even put we didn't even put our email addresses up there. So my email address, and if you email me, I will send it to you. I'm going to go sit at an airport right now. So my email address is Kyla, Kyla, .Krengel, Krengel, at MNPS for Metro Nashville Public Schools.org. Kyla, Kyla, .Krengel, Krengel, at MNPS.org. And we can send you the slides. I can send you the question quad slides. I can send you the article and the questions, the quotes that we used this morning. And then I can also send you access to the Blackboard. If you have access to our Blackboard, you have access to our walkthrough rubric, our SEL ICANN statements. You have everything, because that's where we house everything. So the other one last thing I'm going to say is we also host an SEL conference, and we have about 800 people coming to Nashville in June, so it's June 29th and June 30th. You guys are welcome to come. We have people from all over coming, and actually Tim Shriver is our keynote, and Zaretta Hammond, who focuses on culturally responsive teaching, is our second keynote.
And it's a wonderful conference. Kyla is going to be modest, but it's really definitely worth your time, your effort to get there. So June 29th through the 30th, it's going to be outstanding. We're so sorry that we don't have a lot of time. Do we have any last minute questions before we like Zoom, jump into jeans, and jump into a taxi? And you can, if you email CASEL and direct any questions to me, Pamela Randall-Garner, I'll be happy to respond. But any last burning questions? We want to thank, oh, wait, we do.
Just an acknowledgement that this has been high impact learning for me and us today, this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You all have been so engaging. Thank you.
Bye. And if you're interested in the conference, you don't even have to email me. You can go to www.selconference.org and you can sign up there.